Hi, I'm Kimra Major-Morris. Welcome to Legal Connections. On today's show, a FAMU law professor has researched the right to public education and joins us to explain what the Constitution says about that. You'll meet a law student who's working in the Mediation Clinic. Catherine Jones is here to talk about how her past experiences led to her life of redemption and her desire to advocate for juvenile justice. Javonni Hampton has a report from FAMU in Tallahassee and an alumni profile. All of that is coming up on Legal Connections. Going to school to get educated is a normal part of life. But did you ever consider if you have the right to a public education? Our next guest has studied this topic extensively and joins us to discuss this. FAMU law professor Areto Imoukhuede. Did I say that right?
You did.
Welcome to Legal Connections.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
When did you become interested in the law?
Well, I first became interested in the law as a child. I grew up in Chicago, well, just outside Chicago, Illinois, born and raised in Chicago and in the south suburbs. But when Harold Washington became mayor, one of the things that really, it really just captivated everyone's imagination for possibilities. And I was so excited to say, okay, I was asking my parents, what did Harold Washington do before he became first black mayor of Chicago? And they told me he was a lawyer. So, okay. Later on, being in the land of Lincoln, learned about Abraham Lincoln. Like, what did he do? Well, he was a lawyer. And my dad eventually started to realize a pattern that a lot of people I admired and was excited about their accomplishments were lawyers. He's told me that years later. Then when I was in Boy Scouts, we have this whole citizenship in the world, citizenship in the nation, citizenship in the community, merit badges you can get, or different badges you can get. And I remember going to a village board meeting in our town of Matson outside Chicago, and just raised the question, why hasn't MLK had his holiday recognized in my hometown yet? And it actually sparked them to actually, within a year or so, actually less than that, to recognize the MLK holiday in that town. So, I've sort of was inspired from a very young age to do something with the law, and I admired MLK for all that he did in terms of advancing racial equality and just
making change.
Segregation never made sense to me. Living in Chicago, it just sounded very, very odd thing.
So you're attracted to making change and
Yes.
at an early age. And what are some of the courses you teach at FAMU Law?
I teach constitutional law. I basically teach all the constitutional law courses, constitutional law 1, 2, First Amendment, upper level courses. And those courses, right now I'm teaching constitutional law 2, which is the rights and liberties course.
Okay.
And then I'll be teaching constitutional law, the First Amendment course in the spring. I'm also teaching education law right now. And I've taught overseas the human right to public education, or the human right to education, as well as international justice seminar, or international justice course overseas in The Hague. I taught the international human right to education a few years ago, just before the pandemic.
So extensive study on public education. Tell us what you've learned. If you could summarize it, and maybe in a nutshell, because I don't want us to run out of time, but I do want to know what the takeaways have been for you after your extensive studies.
Well, first thing is that education is essential to liberty, to freedom, and education is essential to self-governance, democracy, as we call it. So the idea that you can get by without having an educated populace and still have a democratic society is ridiculous. That's something Thurgood Marshall recognized both in the Brown case when he was the advocate for it, but then later on when he was dissenting to the Rodriguez case, where the U.S. Supreme Court said there is no right to public education, San Antonio versus Rodriguez. It seemed like that had already been resolved, and the U.S. Supreme Court said there's no fundamental right. Now, that's to be taken with a grain of salt because every state recognizes the right currently, whether in the Constitution, in their state constitutions, or by judicial decision making, interpreting their Constitution. So, for example, Florida's Article 9 guarantees a right to public education. But what does that actually mean? What type of consistency does there have to be? Enter the Equal Protection Clause, which is supposed to guarantee us certain protections, so that literally equal protection under the law within the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. So one of the things I've learned is something that's probably unsurprising our audience, is that there's incredible amounts of racial discrimination in the context of education that continues. It has continued well past Brown, well past Rodriguez, which was involving Mexican-American school children, suing, saying there was discrimination based on, or they weren't getting adequate educations because their schools weren't funded properly. Now, we're all familiar with schools not being funded properly. Rodriguez basically gave the green light to that, to saying that financial disparities are not something the court's going to scrutinize closely. But we have later cases, not too much later, Plyler versus Doe, another case that says that actually education is still important even under the U.S. Constitution. So it's not just limited to the state Constitution. So all that's to say there is hope to do something about it. But in the context of things like the school to prison pipeline, where certain zero tolerance policies are known to target Black and brown children, we know that the reality is that it's an ongoing fight to make sure that the regulatory agencies, the school districts, and the states that are responsible for providing education are actually doing their job. And that's part of my mission as I do my scholarship, is to do just that.
Interesting. And so when you talk about the prison to pipeline, the school to prison pipeline, right, tell us about some of the issues that you've been reading about and studying and sharing with your students.
Well, I'll jump straight to a very, very straightforward conclusion. The moment you have law enforcement carrying the power to wield violence of the most fatal kind upon our students, touching their lives, is the moment you see a drop in their test scores. You see a drop in achievement. You see a drop in their ability to actually complete their education, drop out of high school, etc. This is an empirical fact.
I want to cut in just there, because where we're talking about the discriminatory policies that still exist in some educational institutions or in the policies, to enter into them, what you're saying is there's another layer, not only the discriminatory educational practices, but the other layer is the security, the safety of the children is taken to another level when we have police on the school grounds.
Yes.
Quite a bit of information, and these are loaded questions, and I know you can't fully answer them here, but is there anything you'd like to add?
I guess if I were to add one thing, it would be to stay vigilant as to what you can do in your community. Participate in the school board meetings. Show up for the town hall meeting. So that when the Orlando Commission meets, show up and let your voice be heard. You have folks out there who care deeply about education but feel that their voices cannot be heard. So if you don't need to be a constitutional law scholar to get the fundamental idea that education is not just a point of access to something. It is a goal. It is a good in and of itself. So if we can get to that, if we can truly embrace that insight, and the insight of the freed enslaved peoples that W.E.B. Du Bois wrote about in Black Reconstruction, that education is essential to liberty. I mean, I guess there's two things, because one thing I want to make sure everyone makes sure they get is the education system in the Southern United States exists only because of the efforts of freed enslaved people to push for education and get that support on the national level and from their allies. Before the Civil War, education was not seen across the South as something that was a public good, and therefore public education did not exist. We cannot go back to those days.
Thank you so much for sharing and putting this on in the forefront for us to go back and study and see how we can participate in improving these systems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Education is essential for personal growth, social development, and economic progress. By providing access to education for all children, regardless of their background, society can ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to reach their full potential.
Before I came to law school, I was a licensed mental health counselor, and so I was very passionate about that career, and I was looking for a way to kind of bridge the psychology part of helping people with the legal part, and mediation to me is somewhere in the middle. So you have the legal documents, the pleadings and the draftings that you deal with, but you also have that personnel and where you get to interact with clients and kind of think about alternative ways to settle disputes. And so to me, it was a happy medium. It was also another way for me to generate income outside of being an attorney. It was a position that I could have as a law student while still immersing myself into the court system. So it just seemed like an interesting trade to pick up in addition to my history and then where I planned on going. So it's definitely helped me just become more adaptable and flexible in how I approach different situations. It's helped with my cultural awareness and competency and just recognizing the different backgrounds that people have and how those backgrounds can present and bring different perspectives and problems and how to deal with them. It's also helped me with my legal skills in terms of negotiating and communication and empathy, and I draft marital settlement agreements and parenting plans. And so it's giving me this just like holistic view of skills that I can have when I graduate. So typical day is just reading the email, so seeing who wants to schedule a mediation, emailing them back, sending out engagement letters for those who have already scheduled, so just kind of letting them know the fee schedule and the rules and what they can expect. And then it's also going into the mediation, so meeting with clients who are representing themselves, we call them pro se, or meeting with clients who are represented by counsel, and really reading the pleadings, so any type of motions that have been submitted, any type of agreements, and then figuring out where the disconnect is, what are the parties' major problems, and helping them kind of foster this joint problem solving process in which they can come to an amicable agreement for the both of them. I think people should participate in the mediation clinic here because it just gives you this invaluable experience. It helps you with your negotiation skills, it helps you with your summarization skills, it helps you with your communication skills, your networking. You have the opportunity to work with attorneys in a different setting than just their kind of understudy. Again, that cultural awareness and competency, that diversity component that you get. It also allows for self-assessment, so you get to practice mediations and receive feedback from real professionals, and then also just self-reflection for yourself. So just the opportunity to be able to say, hey, this is what I did well, these are things that I want to improve on. So it helps you not only become a great mediator, which is a new career, but then also helping you become a better future attorney. Just speaking in generally, I meet a lot of clients who are just in these highly conflictual situations, stressed, in and out of courtrooms, paying legal fees, and being able to just provide the opportunity for them to feel heard, to feel seen, to kind of resolve that conflict, anger, and stress that can be surrounding different legal processes, saving them money in litigation and court filing fees, opening the lines of communication. It's really just an opportunity for me to advocate not for just one person specifically, but for able to advocate for everybody involved in the process. I decided to come here, one, because I did a ton of research on the school and I loved just their mission statement, what they stood for. I love the close-knit community that it provides. So even just the smaller building that you have, that easy access to professors and any type of administration or help that you need. If you are looking for a school and a community that will uplift you, empower you, support you, and provide any resource that you need to be successful, then this is the school for you. If you're looking for a larger scene, this may not be it, but if you're looking for really that personable feeling, no matter if it's the interactions with the custodians, the security, if it's financial aid, they're definitely going to make sure that you feel like you're being catered to as a student, your needs are being heard as a person, and your interests are being considered as a future attorney in the legal field. If anybody is considering becoming a mediator, to definitely just give it a try. Just look into it. You have the opportunity to complete 24-hour county training, become a Florida Supreme Court certified county mediator, and it's pretty much just a really rewarding career and you won't regret it.
It's important to make the right choices in life, and there's something called redemption that helps you to cope with a troubled past. Our next guest is on the road to redemption after serving time in prison as a child. Her goal now is to help make Orlando a better and safer place. Welcome to Legal Connections, Catherine Jones.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us about the Orange County Task Force.
One, it was an honor to even get invited. I was the first person to be on that panel that was directly impacted, which I thought was really important because who better than a child that had perpetrated harm or gun violence to be able to say, this is how we can prevent this from happening again. And so it was an honor to be there and to be among some great thinkers and innovators to make recommendations on how to stop the youth violence that has been happening in Orange County.
And for the benefit of the audience, can you just give us a brief explanation of what got you to that point where you were a part of that program?
I was invited by Coach Ruben Saldana, who was a credible messenger, also directly impacted, and somehow was unanimously voted in to take his spot now that he is actually on staff in Orange County and couldn't participate. And I stepped into it wholeheartedly, super excited to be able to bring about local change in my community and help the youth here.
And you're what they consider to be a credible messenger. Tell us about that.
Yes. Another thing that I do that's super exciting because I see a reflection of myself in these youth. So many are coming from impoverished, marginalized communities and the ones that society gives up on and say that, you know, they're not going to amount to anything. They're already writing them off because their parents are incarcerated or they're coming from poverty. And I know from experience that all it takes is the right person to step into their life and mentor them and show them their value and tell them they're worth something and they deserve love and respect. And to be able to play that role in these youth's lives and see them turn around and so far credible messengers, all of the children that have been involved in the program have not reoffended or gotten into any more trouble because they have another outlet now and they have a group of people that believe in them.
And just again, for the benefit of the audience, you and your brother you were charged as adults for murder. And how old were you?
13.
13.
And he was 12.
And what do you say now when you see all these stories about gun violence and kids with guns in schools? What are your thoughts?
I asked the question that I wish would have been asked with me. Why? Why? Instead of just looking at the sensationalized headlines that come that, you know, we have these youth that have no hearts and no regard for human life. I know from experience that no 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old wakes up one day and says, you know what, I just want to kill somebody. They're coming from a place of trauma and impulsiveness. Their brains aren't fully developed and they're responding out of that trauma and hurt. So my question is always why? What happened to this baby, this child, that makes them feel like their only recourse, their only resolution to whatever it is they're going through is violence? And that's why I do the credible messenger work, because we look at the why and try to touch into those areas of trauma and give them healing so that they know there are other options, because I didn't think there were at 13. At 13, the system had failed. The criminal courts, the probation officers had a pedophile living in my house that allowed me to be subjected to sexual abuse. The schools had reported it. The teachers had reported it, and nothing happened. I was never protected. And so it makes me look at these kids and say, where did the system fail them? Where did the adults in their life fail them? Where did the community fail them? And that leads back to the task force, because it takes a community and recommendations implemented by our local government to prevent these children from going down that path.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm really just happy to see you. And
Thank you.
Recently became aware of the circumstances, but what an opportunity for you. Is it one-on-one counseling when you go? What is it like? Give us sort of a glimpse into the work that you're doing.
Well, I have two young girls that I'm assigned to that I mentor one-on-one. I'm like a first aid responder. If they need to talk, if they're going through a hard time, the challenges that they're facing in school, and they want to talk, then I'm available for them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have youth events that we attend to with our mentees, and it's transformative to them, because a lot of these kids come from background where they don't have stable parents or a support system, and now they do. They have an outlet that's positive. Coach does MMA training, and they're able to channel their aggression and their anger in a positive way, a positive outlet, and it's been super successful.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like a wonderful program, and what a resource for the kids and the community as a whole, because you know, the village mentality that we're everyone's kids.
Absolutely.
So is there anything you'd like to add?
All of our kids, no matter what they've done, no matter their race, no matter their socioeconomic status, they all deserve to be loved, and they're all children, no matter what they do. And the answer is not, when they do something wrong, to put them on a trajectory to spend the rest of their lives in prison. I didn't become who I am today because prison worked. I became who I am in spite of prison, because being incarcerated into an adult prison at 13, 14 was the most traumatic thing I ever experienced in life. So you have an already traumatized child being subjected to more trauma, and somehow expecting them to come home and be productive members of society. It's counterproductive. It was only my mentor that came into the prison in a ministry that changed my life, and that's why I'm so dedicated to mentoring, because it doesn't take the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolm X's to make a difference. Everybody has the ability to change the trajectory of someone's life if they're willing to take the time and energy. And so everyone become a mentor without the label. You don't need the label, but just to be a positive influence in someone's life, it's important.
Everyone's efforts matter. That's an excellent point, and thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
So good to have you on. Thank you again, Catherine, for sharing a bit of your story and your work. And we hope to see you and hear more about your work soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
There's more Legal Connections coming up after this. Stay with us.
When the bell tolls, who will answer the call for justice? Who will own the responsibility of molding those to be socially responsible? What if there was a law school that not only taught social justice, but it became a way of life, where families are the cornerstone of the community and the accused are innocent until proven guilty, and where social matters matter and are handled with swift justice? From the rattle to the gavel, we are Rattlers for Justice. We are Florida A&M University College of Law.
Standing tall for 66 years, Florida A&M University's Bragg Memorial Stadium has a new look and a new name. FAMU officially named its football field Ken Riley Field at Bragg Memorial Stadium.
It's an amazing feeling, you know, to see that name going there, and we just like to thank, you know, President Robinson and AD Tiffany for putting this all together. It's like icing on the cake. He finally was able to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and now just to be honored by the school that he loved is, like I said, it's been a great year for us.
Florida A&M University, the only public historically black college and university in the state of Florida, was the first to acknowledge his talents. Riley was inducted into FAMU's Athletic Hall of Fame in 1982. He played for the Bengals from 1969 to 1983.
It was a special moment in my life when I had an opportunity to watch him being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And to do this here, it's just icing on the cake.
You know, to be an All-American player, NFL player, and now NFL Hall of Famer, it just goes to show that you can accomplish all your goals right here at FAMU just like everybody else.
The name change comes just in time for the 2023 homecoming game in October. For Florida A&M University, I'm Javonni Hampton.
John Dorsey Dew Jr. was one of the original 57 pioneers to graduate from the Florida A&M University College of Law before it was closed in 1968. Dew was born in Indiana but adopted Florida as his home state in 1960 when he enrolled in law school in Tallahassee He graduated in 1963, the same year he married civil rights activist and leader Patricia Stevens. A self-proclaimed freedom lawyer and longtime community activist, Dew worked as an attorney in Mississippi during Freedom Summer on behalf of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to monitor violence against civil rights workers. As an attorney for the Congress of Racial Equality, he helped pioneer the tactic of moving civil rights cases to federal court to avoid biased Southern state courts. He also organized sanitation workers and other unions to fight poverty. In Miami, Dew's work focused on welfare rights, quality education, immigration, and community policing. Dew served as lead attorney in the long-running desegregation case against Dade County Public Schools. He also helped secure the release of 500 Haitian refugee children. Along with alum Arthenia Joyner, Dew attended the plaque dedication for the 57 original law school alumni that was held on FAMU's campus outside of the original College of Law in 2022. We salute John Dorsey Dew Jr., a legal pioneer and true rattler for justice.
That's our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Kimra Major-Morris. See you next time on Legal Connections.